webinar. Okay, thank you for joining us. My name is Ruth Cusick. I'm a senior staff attorney in the Statewide Education Rights Project of Public Counsel.
Hi, my name is Herminia Galvez, and I'm a member of the IJTC Youth Justice Coalition.
Hey everybody, my name is Kim, also with the Youth Justice Coalition.
And we are excited for you all to join us. We're going to talk both about some community campaign work for juvenile ticket amnesty and also some other activism around broader juvenile ticket issues and student transit issues. Okay. Okay, thanks for bearing with us as we're just working on our little tech issues. Okay, we think we got it straightened out.
So good morning everyone. As many people probably know, there's a local coalition called the Dignity in Schools campaign that is part of a national campaign also known as Dignity in Schools. And the LA chapter of Dignity in Schools includes the Youth Justice Coalition, the Labor Community Strategy Center, Cadre, which works with parents in schools in South Central Los Angeles, the ACLU Educational Rights Division, and Public Counsel. And we've been working together over the last several years to challenge the school to jail track to pass resolutions and new policies at the school district level, as well as with larger county and city agencies to decriminalize student behaviors and to create a more restorative, transformative culture in schools.
Great, thank you. And also, this is Ruth. I just want to make sure to mention to everyone that we are recording this webinar, and so we will send it to you all in the next couple of days. It will be posted on both of our websites, so if you want to share with colleagues. And also, Gabriela Munoz, our administrator, is tracking. If you have questions, you can send them in a chat or raise hands. We're going to get through a certain portion of the presentation just to give you an overview of the key points of information, but don't worry, we're definitely going to have ample time for a group discussion and answer any of your questions. Great. So we, as Kim has said, we work really closely in the LA chapter of the Dignity in Schools campaign to challenge the school to jail track. And one of our close partners, the Labor Community Strategy Center, also that runs the Bus Riders Union, had been documenting for several years, and several other community partners as well, the practice of sort of large daytime curfew sweeps. Young people would come off the public bus to go to school, and they'd be met by their administrators and LAPD or school police and have 20 to 30 students ticketed all at once for violating the city's daytime curfew ordinance. In peak years in the last decade, there were more than 40,000 tickets given in a year, and this was targeted in certain communities of LA, in East LA, South Central and Watts and other areas. So we all worked together over several years and were victorious in changing the LA Municipal Code 4504, which is our daytime curfew ordinance, to ensure that students on the way to school that weren't ticketed, and that also in terms of an enforcement mechanism, that it was really about students who are actually out of school, but anyone going to school should just be encouraged to get there. LAPD and the school police, even before the municipal code changed, issued directives to make sure their officers stop participating in these large-scale kind of enforcement efforts at schools. And after the community victory, the LA Unified School District and the City of LA started a partnership to have community diversion of all daytime curfew tickets issued by the school police or in LAUSD jurisdiction, so that would go to community diversion, where an LAUSD counselor is actually housed at several community centers so that the young person, the student, can get an assessment of any actual attendance issues and support. And as you'll hear soon from one of our youth leaders that, you know, one of the things that was so horrible about this ticketing process is that students were given really hefty fines, and if they got a second to, you know, upwards of $1,000 of fines, and so it was a very alienating court process for low-income families, and a lot of young people, it was a disincentive to even go to school. And so also part of the important community reform effort with the juvenile court was that community service would be available for all tickets, rather than this focus on really steep regressive fines that were targeted for low-income families. And you can see here in the graphic at the bottom of, you know, what kind of conditions our young people are going to school in. So now you're going to hear from one of our leaders in the Youth Justice Coalition, and we're actually going to let you get to see her for her to share her story and why this work is so important.
Hi, yeah. Hello, good morning. My name is Herminia Galvez, and I went to Freeman High School in South Central Los Angeles back from '99 to 2003, and I could really relate to all of this because when I was younger, I seen it, how it affected me and my fellow classmates. Going from where we lived to the school that was our home school was a big distance. So a lot of us that lived in the same block used to always go together or try to make it on time to Freeman High School. Unfortunately, because of the long distance that we lived to where our school was, a lot of times we couldn't make it on time, and we were greeted at getting into school with a very very intense way. We were greeted by cops being outside of our schools waiting for us, by faculty being outside with bullhorns, and already installing fear into us. It was always it was always challenging for us to actually know we're going to be late, we're going to have to deal with this, and even be ticketed, and then have to actually come back home and actually tell our parents, you know, we received the ticket, because at the same time that a lot of our parents have to be at their jobs, and we live in low-income families. Going back home to be able to tell them, oh, you know what, we got a ticket like this, it's like, we don't work. Our job is to go to school. As our parents would say, your responsibility is to go to school. But unfortunately, because of the distance, sometimes it wouldn't be possible. But we were always greeted in this type of way, and it made us feel really uncomfortable because we were already being treated like if we were already criminals and stuff like that. It wasn't about being introduced to actually counseling or some kind of way of actually fixing the issue, of them finding out what's the issue, why is it that you're being late, or what's bringing that. And unfortunately, it affected a lot of us to the point that we felt like we were being pushed out. Some of us classmates that were going through not knowing how to speak English, not knowing how to talk to the police officers, the school security, to the faculty, being able to explain themselves right or being understood right. So they ended up leaving. To tell you the truth, like, I had a group like of friends and classmates, like 30 of us, and a lot of us were very affected to the point that we felt pushed out and we left Freeman High School. And I could say like 10 of us followed me to Youth Opportunities Unlimited, which was a lot closer to where we lived. So we felt that maybe that was, we wouldn't fit in that school because they didn't understand our issues or our reasons, or, you know. So we ended up looking for something closer to us, to maybe that would annihilate the fact of getting into so much trouble and getting into contact with the police, because in reality we were not out there trying to do bad things or be in trouble. We were just trying to get our education, but we were coming across this, that we felt that this was getting in our way and affecting us and our families also, because we didn't work, so we didn't have no way of means to actually pay for these tickets. So getting pushed out of Fremont brought us into an alternative high school, which was at the beginning, well, let me explain a little bit how Fremont looked. Fremont, it was a big campus. When I started Fremont, we didn't really have bars. But as the year of ninth grade proceeded, I remember them putting bars all around the school. And we were really in reality thinking like, what's going on? Why are we being, I mean, we were already being, felt like we were being attacked as being like in a prison or something. But they did that. They had school securities all around. And they had police officers in the front of our schools posted all the time. So that's how it looked like. Coming into Youth Opportunities Unlimited was something closer to us, maybe like 5 blocks away from where we live. But because I think that they've, in alternative schools, sometimes they get a lot of those students that don't fit in these schools. They're already under high alert, thinking that we're all bad, or we've all came from that we're all the ones that are being pushed out, and all we're like the black sheep. So their attitudes towards us are not really like welcoming. It's more like a little similar to Fremont also, blow bullhorns, screaming at us, "Y'all better come inside, hurry up, you guys got 5 minutes," like faculty screaming at us in front of our family members, or having camera systems in place and to be recording everything that we do, metal detectors, also being searches in school constantly, or constantly being threatened, saying that they will call law enforcement to deal with us and stuff like that. So I've dealt with all that, and then we've dealt with ticketing and being an effect to our family members, because we're bringing them hardship, like we're bringing them problems that in reality we were never trying to, but in reality things happen that from walking a certain long distance to Fremont, it was sometimes how do I say, unexcusable, but I mean in reality it's a long distance and stuff, you know, like sometimes we couldn't make it on time, so.
Cool. Thank you so much, Armenia.
Just to add one thing to what Armenia is saying too, that I'm sure people may already know this, but these tickets, the initial ticket you got, either for truancy and many other incident issues too, was $250 usually, definitely for truancy, $250 for the first ticket. And the failure to pay that would mean that it would go as high as $910. So we weren't talking about small fines that families could afford. And if you got 2 or 3 tickets, you know, families could be faced with all kinds of other penalties. So that's why this became such a huge financial burden for families too. We just want to make sure that people know how extreme it was.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just take us off the webcam to go back. Okay. All one second. Okay, so we all advocated together, as Kim and Armenia shared, with Labor Community Strategy Center, with our other partners in Dignity in Schools campaign, to really document this practice. So as all of the shift around daytime curfew, those community victories happened, also it called into question what was the total structure around enforcement and all these other huge fines, leading to the closure of the Informal Juvenile Traffic Court in 2012. So what is currently happening is that probation has responsibility for all of the non-traffic juvenile citations. And there's one central probation citation diversion office in Van Nuys, and juvenile traffic citation. So really think of everything that is in the vehicle code. So if you're riding your bike without a helmet, that is part of the vehicle code, are going to adult traffic court. And I'm going to have Kim share about a second important victory that they got related to MTA.
Well, just just real briefly, a couple stories. The Youth Justice Coalition, we have our own high school, and so even when we were issuing students their own Metro Pass and their own school ID, and we're paying a lot, about $26,000 a year just for a small school to get free Metro Passes to our students, we started to see increasingly students having impact with mostly sheriffs, but other law enforcement also, on the MTA buses and trains. We had several students who were brought to our school in handcuffs by sheriffs who claimed that both their Metro Pass and in some cases their Metro Pass and their student ID was fraudulent, and they, instead of just calling us to confirm that it was legitimate, they brought them in handcuffs, embarrassed them in front of their classmates, a long car trip oftentimes, and we had to negotiate for them to be released, and at that point, most of the time, their Metro Pass, which we had paid for, and their student IDs were already ripped up. So we had to also pay the expense of reissuing those passes. The second thing that happened was that young people started getting arrested. We had one member who was arrested when he was on the Metro for having a 3-inch Sharpie, which is, he was charged with vandalism tools. He was older too, so we started to see this with older students also, but because he had just turned 18, he ended up doing 4 days in county jail before we could get all those charges dropped. And it was dropped immediately in court, but not before he'd taken all that time. It's his first arrest, his first experience in county jail. Another young man had a fare evasion ticket that he wasn't able to pay, so it went to a warrant. He was on the Metro with a Snickers bar. He wasn't even on the platform yet, but they stopped him because he was eating on the steps going up to the platform, and that Snickers bar got him that stop, and they ran his name, and it came up where they had this warrant for failure to pay fare evasion ticket. So he spent 5 days in custody before he was released. So we saw this huge expense, both in terms of young people's human rights, of course, enduring horrible conditions in court and in custody, as well as just huge problems for taxpayers who are paying for this exorbitant cost around policing and incarceration. So in 2014, we argued with the Sheriff's Department and the Metro Division, both their security division and their Ombudsman's office, and won a diversion for all tickets issued on MTA to go to probation diversion. Because at that point they were saying, we are going to send young people who get fare evasion tickets, which at the time was the highest number of tickets. That's the other thing we did. We asked for the data from probation about what kind of ticketing was happening in the county, and found out the #1 cause of tickets for all those years, about 10,000 tickets a year, were for fare evasion, the #1 cause of tickets for young people in LA County. And so we argued that they should get the same diversion as all the other cases and go to probation's diversion program, given the fact it was the diversion program that existed in the county, although we'd like a better diversion that's non-criminalizing, but at least it got young people away from a court process and fees for the fare evasion. At the time, and it still exists now, MTA had their own traffic court, their own MTA court, and while the fines are slightly less than regular court, they were still pretty exorbitant at about $150. So we wanted to not only decriminalize that process, but also move young people away from punitive fines.
Great, and I think something really important that Kim and Vinny are talking about is that, with all of the community organizing and activism around daytime curfew had really been used as this sort of community stop and frisk, occupying of spaces where young people are, and that fare evasion then sort of took over as this main way, to police and surveil young people who are just trying to get around. We'll talk more later about current work around fare evasion and the needs to support access to transit for young people in LA. So now Amelia is going to share a little bit about, once the Informal Juvenile Traffic Court closed, what us community partners did to assist young people.
So community advocacy to clear out tickets. 2012 to 2015, Youth Justice Coalition, Labor Community Strategy Center, and Public Counsel partners, community legal clinics. We assisted over 200 young people in LA County. Documented challenges in clearing pre-2012 tickets efficiently. In December 2015, this group was successful in getting Judge Levanas to grant amnesty to nearly 250,000 pre-2012 tickets issued to youth under 18.
And just to talk about some of the crazy cases we got in these clinics, we were doing clinics here at the Youth Justice Coalition. I'm just speaking for the YJC's experience, not even all the work that Ruth can speak to also. But we were doing clinics both here in our center as well as going out into the community and doing clinics in schools and probation offices, other locations, community centers. We saw people that were in their 40s that still had tickets from their juvenile records that still weren't cleared, that they had been driving on suspended or non-existent licenses for all that time. We saw people, one young man, he was 37, was still trying to pay off his tickets from when he was a teenager. We saw numerous young people that were struggling to go all the way to Van Nuys and clear their tickets. So even the idea that we would have a process where we went to hearings that just waited forever to get tickets actually cleared, or had a really burdensome process for how to get those tickets cleared, a lot of community service or an unclear community service process. So for all those reasons, the clinics really helped. Working with legal advocates really streamlined the process for young people, but still became clear that it was a huge burden to have only one court that was available in the county for all young people throughout the county, and to have it be a program, a process that wasn't efficient and wasn't clear for people was really troublesome.
Yeah, and then in this work, we also want to lift up the supervising judge of delinquency, Judge Donna Groman, because she's been a very important ally to community organizers and advocates, because as she was seeing cases in delinquency and seeing that young people were making progress to meet their terms of probation but had all of these old tickets, and so we were sharing both with her and the presiding juvenile court judge, Judge Levanas, as Kim has shared. Basically, we were able to assist a couple of hundred young people, but we knew that there were hundreds of thousands of these infractions. And like Kim is talking about, the kinds of cases we documented, not just daytime curfew, but how many young people in South Central Watts and other areas had loitering tickets. And then it explained to us that they were standing outside of a family member's business or something. And so seeing how much these, what law enforcement will call these, status offenses that young people were just getting by the nature of being in their community were really about a tactic to occupy young people in a space to, make sure that they knew if they were out in the community, this is what they'd interact with. So it was really important for us to document to the court, the way these legal codes have been used is really to occupy and suppress and alienate certain young people from their life opportunities. And through the clinics, we also met a lot of young people who were, going to college, getting their lives together, trying to get employment, and these holds were the one bar. They can't enter Job Corps, they can't enter other job training programs with these holds.
Yeah, that's similar to when being pushed out and being like this. I remember having a ticket when I was younger, and when I went to Bryman College trying to get in, I had this hold that was affecting me, and they told me, what, you have a hold, then we can't provide the education that what you're trying to get. So I had to go back and take care of something that I had completely forgotten about, because in reality, I never took care of it because I didn't know how. And my family couldn't at the same time also take care of it. So that prevented me from actually getting an education, even though I was pushing myself through, actually kept pushing through, even though I went through this, the Fremont, although I went through that in Youth Justice, Youth Opportunity Unlimited, I still kept trying to have opportunities, not to stay without options.
I think all the discouragement that students felt and faced also really, we see it at Youth Justice Coalition because we work with young people who've been system involved, and all of us have been, well, I wouldn't say all of us, but I say nearly all of us are pushed into the juvenile courts, juvenile halls. California Youth Authorities, for some of us, began with our push out of school. And so for Armenia and many of us, the implications for this is that people then get trapped in the underground economy, including people spending years cycling in and out of addiction, courts, jails, even prisons. And so we know that this has devastating consequences not only for people's ability to pay fines and get on with their lives, but also in having people be pushed entirely away from positive things and be trapped in the streets.
Great. So now,
the other thing that happened was that in 2015, and I think Ruth mentioned this before, but we were able to win Amnesty. It's something that we were asking for regularly. Many of us were involved in the countywide task force, originally a task force to address truancy, and then a task force to address the school to jail track more broadly that Judge Nash set up, and then Judge Groman took over. And in 2015, after a lot of years of advocating at that table and beyond, our groups were successful in getting amnesty for nearly 250,000 pre-2012 tickets.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that order, and that's why you're here today to learn, but we really wanted to give that context. And also just a pause to explain that you might be wondering, oh, this order was issued a year ago. Why are you guys just talking about this now? Well, for those of us who've done all this community organizing and advocacy before we started to do community education on it, we wanted to make sure that we could tell all of you and the young people we work with that they could go to the DMV and check that their hold was cleared. And as you can imagine, that this census was over 245,000 juvenile infractions. There was a serious process between the courts and the DMV to actually ensure that all of them were cleared. So we didn't want to, last summer, engage with you all and share and then have half of you come back saying none of it's cleared. We do want your help in documenting, so we're going to walk through what the next steps are. But in terms of what this order covers, it is a specific list of juvenile tickets in the county, but given that it covers 245,000, it is almost all of the main kinds of offenses that we were seeing, and these were cases that were filed originally in the Informal and Juvenile Traffic Court before the closure. And one of the things that Kim does a great job of reminding is that we usually frame this into like young people who might be trying to get into job corps, go to college, things. But as she shared, there are folks in their 30s and 40s, and there were certain glitches at times that maybe once you became an adult, your ticket was cleared. But it's really important for people to know that if they feel like they have tried to handle all of their issues, they may very well have a loitering ticket from when they were 13 years old that may have happened in the 80s or something. And so to the extent that any of you partners are also working in other adult programs assisting people with career and education, that this is an important thing to emphasize. And so this, as we know, the kind of ultimate consequence is having a hold on your driver's license. And as we've shared, this really just escalates people's involvement in the court system, because then they end up driving without a license and have all these more severe penalties connected to traffic court.
I would say the other thing that's a huge financial burden is that we've seen in our clinic, as well as our membership, a number of people who have had their cars impounded. So obviously driving without a license and having additional tickets on your DMV record enables law enforcement to take your car, and so families, usually they get a 30-day hold on that vehicle. Oftentimes it's the only vehicle for the entire family, and they have to pay $1,600 to get it out of impound. It's huge profits obviously going to the impound companies and to local law enforcement, and most people can't afford the fees, so they lose their car, and that car then goes to law enforcement to auction off. So we also think that's like another huge burden that isn't really being talked about, that we're concerned about.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. So in terms of whether you're someone who might have an old ticket and have a DMV hold, or whether you're a community provider who's working with folks around this, this order does have a really comprehensive application, and so we hope that most people will get relief from it. There are only a couple of offenses, like if you were driving under the influence or something that the court determined was a more serious safety risk. But, you know, really, we don't unfortunately have like a list to give you. The best thing that we can say is that we're encouraging everyone to go to the DMV to request your hold printout and see. And if on that hold printout there's something like loitering or a daytime curfew ticket or any other you know, minor status offense, that probably should be cleared. So we are going to be monitoring. So the first step is, hopefully, this is exciting, good news that there is this order. We're very excited about this step that the court has taken to recognize really, honestly, how bogus this whole thing was. But if you began doing this work and trying to make sure that holds are cleared, we want to offer you some support. So if you're working with someone or you yourself believe you have a ticket that should be cleared, but it isn't, we have a hotline that you can call. The number is listed there. And Youth Justice Coalition has a free legal clinic the second and fourth Saturday of the month from 10 to noon. And just a quick note that the Public Counsel number is not an intake line, so you can go to our site to see our children's rights intake and intake for our foster youth project. This really is a hotline for us to document. So if you call in and say you are working with 5 young people and none of them had it clear, then we can try to follow up with you. And maybe Kim or maybe you want to share in terms of what else you cover at the legal clinic, just so people have that information.
And the legal clinic, again, it's all free. We will help people to actually clear their holds. If it means going with folks to DMV or challenging what's happening with probation, that's included. The legal clinic also has a number of other services that are free: immigration support, support for young people that are facing life sentences or already serving life sentences, including adults now, many of them, in helping coming home, help for people in free expungements, free sealing of records, which again, a lot of these tickets, because they end up becoming warrants, that's an important process, as well as support in other legal issues, as long as there's a criminal juvenile justice issue. If they have other issues around tenants' rights, labor disputes, that kind of thing, we can refer them. So don't discourage them from walking in, but we can handle those things in our clinic.
Great.
The other thing is that we're available to come out and train young people and teachers and other youth workers about this whole process, and to do a rotation of this same clinic in their school or neighborhood center. And we apologize to Ruth and Herminia are really sick. That's why you keep hearing coughs and sneezes and all that. But,
great, thank you. So what we want to do now is just also make sure that it's clear for all of you what this covers and doesn't cover. So as we've shared, we engage in a several-year-long process to assist young people in clearing these tickets and in documenting the challenges. But for any new juvenile ticket, we've included this information for you. So this is, probation now processes all current citations except for the exceptions that we shared earlier. So these are all of the numbers. Please note that there's a specific line if Spanish-speaking families, need to connect and schedule. And there's also an email. So if you, get your DMV hold printout, you can actually scan it and email it to them. And if there's questions you have, you can also refer to them to say, these are minor tickets. I'm hoping some of these should just be cleared. How can you assist me? But definitely you can also stay in touch with us to track that. But we just wanted to make sure to give you probation's contact info, since they are another important resource. And so now we have some time and wanted to open it up. If any of you have questions about any of the information you shared or want to engage more and ask Herminia any questions about what she's doing now or all of her work, but happy to have a group discussion. Yeah, and then what we'll do is talk for about 10 minutes just to see if there's clarifying questions for any of this, and then we will move and be able to talk another 10 to 15 minutes together about YJC and other partners' current work to address fare evasions more comprehensively. So I know Gabriela is monitoring. People can raise their hand or they can chat a question, but want to just pause here to see if anyone have questions, or also you can just feel free to share with us who you are, where you're joining us from. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, so maybe maybe our information was very clear and succinct. If anyone does have questions, you can just send a chat and we'll answer it that way, or you can raise your hand. There's a little icon to raise your hand and let us know you have a question. So just interrupt us if you have a question, please. Or, you know, Gabriela's monitoring it, but I'll go ahead and move us on. Oh, is that someone? Yes, hello, do you have a question? Okay, now maybe we're just,
Floyd Peterson was talking.
Oh, okay. Floyd, do you have a question?
Mr. Peterson, we can't hear you. Is there any way you could maybe send your question in?
We're just getting some background noise, so maybe it's sort of picking up, maybe your computer is being able to pick up some of the audio, but not fully. We had some audio challenges ourselves when we were setting up this morning, so if you see, you can type a message on the sidebar if you're not able to get through audio. Okay, so sorry about that. Oh, hello? Okay. We are all learning together in this work with new technological tools. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Kim and Armenia to share more about their work.
Well, we just wanted to give people a quick update on the fare evasion process because this came out of this work also. As I mentioned earlier, when we were looking at tickets, the #1 cause of ticketing of young people under 18 as well as of adults in LA County is fare evasion. That was 10,000 tickets a year when tickets were still being issued before we won the diversion locally in 2014. And of course it was the #1 cause of youth ticketing in LA County, and we assume the #1 cause in many other metropolitan regions across the state. It raised for us, as well as the criminalization issues that I talked about where our members and students were even spending time in custody for fare evasion, raised for us the need for free student metro passes. And of course, as a small school, we were seeing this also in the incredibly high cost even to buy student passes. Similarly, it's a very bureaucratic and difficult process. It seems like it'd be easy to get a free metro pass for your students, even if you are not a free metro pass, but a discount metro pass. But even that's a difficult process for youth and families, let alone for schools. So for all of those reasons, we started to also advocate for a free metro pass. When we looked at the cost, which seems crazy to us too, at the time that we started this a couple of years ago, MTA had a contract with the sheriffs for about $85 million a year to patrol the trains and buses. In the time that we started talking to them about the idea of a free student pass, we also worked with Public Health Department in LA County to issue a report. Young people issued their own analysis of free metro passes and what it would support in terms of students and parents. And then we worked with Public Health Department to look at the cost analysis for the county and found that less than $20 million a year would provide a free metro pass for every single student in LA County from preschool through college, knowing that a lot of people wouldn't even take advantage of it. Of course, preschoolers in elementary school usually are close to school and many of them get free transportation anyway under a certain age, so they wouldn't even need it. And many college students or even high school students, particularly in wealthier areas, are already driving to school. So 20 million would be the most we would need for a free metro pass. And MTA, we've met with them numerous times. We've had hearings in front of the MTA board, and we've met with the sheriff's division that is on the MTA trains and buses numerous times. And they've always told us that it was financially impossible for them to issue free metro passes. Yet in the time that we've asked for that, there's been a 20 million increase in the in the contract that MTA pays to the sheriffs. The $20 million increase, of course, would have provided free Metro passes. And what we continue to see is a lineup of students in communities of color on the MTA trains and buses. Oftentimes, the stops and questioning leads to a stop and a pat down, and oftentimes even a search of backpacks and other materials, all for fare evasion questioning. We don't see these same kind of stops of white students and these same lineups of white students in the more affluent or middle class areas of LA County. So we think it's one of the most egregious forms of racial profiling also in the county, and an incredibly expensive way of conducting public safety, as opposed to seeing Metro passes as an essential part of not only providing students access to education, museums, health, jobs, etc., all that LA County has to offer, but also a way of decriminalizing students. So because of that, we did a couple things in addition to the fare evasion victory that we won at the county level. We surveyed students, more than 2,000 youth, on their challenges with getting transportation, including getting the money together, as well as their experiences with Metro police as well and school police. And I mentioned that we did more extensive data analysis with the Public Health Department. And that led to us not only winning the fare evasion diversion here in LA County, but we also wrote and co-sponsored a bill that was passed this year, Senate Bill 882 by Senator Hertzberg, to decriminalize fare evasion for youth under 18 statewide. We weren't able to get fines eliminated. That was originally in the bill, and it was something that was amended out. But that's our goals for the future, is to also get fines eliminated. But we wanted to let everyone know that for students across the state, and all young people, even if they're not in school, anyone under 18 can no longer get criminal charges for fare evasion. It's been written out of the penal code. Our next steps are not only to eliminate the fines statewide, but also to challenge this increasing funding for law enforcement. So there's a new contract that's about to be issued. We just delayed it for 3 months. Last year there was a hearing, and we were successful in delaying the decision. But it's a proposal to have even more money go to a combination of LA County Sheriffs, LAPD, and Long Beach PD to secure, quote unquote, the MTA system. And again, we need your help to push that that public safety is not just suppression. Public safety includes ensuring young people have access to free transportation so they can get to and from school, to ensure that a youth development focus and vision is intact in LA County, not just a suppression vision for LA County. And so if anyone wanted to get in that fight, either at the local level, pushing MTA to provide free Metro passes, or at the state level to push for greater decriminalization as well as a free Metro pass there, that would be amazing. We had a bill last year also that would have required school districts statewide to secure student transportation for free for all low-income students and foster care youth, but unfortunately we weren't able to get it through. So we need a lot of help on that too.
Yeah, and one of the things, if any of you who are joining us today, if you're a social worker or you work at a community services agency, we'd be really excited to partner with you, because maybe you don't see yourself sometimes as a policy advocate, but given how many young people you work with, that documentation of what young people are facing every day on the trains, how much real access to transit would ease their burdens, assist them getting, to education or to work readiness and other things, we'd be really excited to partner with you. So
just one last thing, just to humanize this issue. When we were first calling for a free Metro pass and a decriminalization of fare evasion, one of the things we were able to do with a lot of probably people on the call support is the Education Coordinating Council, that's the countywide entity looking at education reform and success, passed a resolution unanimously in support of both decriminalization and a free Metro pass. And one of the things that really moved them, I think, was a story that a DCFS worker talked about. One of the young men on her caseload was a foster care youth, was in the street and was being chased by a group of men who were threatening him. He went to the Metro stop, the bus stop, and asked the bus driver for what's called a courtesy ride. And that's one of the things we've seen, is that with the increased attention to MTA to pay for law enforcement to check fare evasion, now bus drivers are giving less and less courtesy rides, which are, they used to have discretion to allow people to ride for free if they felt like it was an emergency or urgent or a person really didn't have money. And we're starting to see that getting closed down for people. Or when people get courtesy rides, law enforcement will come on the bus and ask the driver, does anyone here have a courtesy ride, or did anyone here get on for free? And the bus driver will point people out, and we're seeing people get pulled off of buses for that reason. And in the case,
they just stopped my sister-in-law. Recently, they just stopped my sister-in-law. She was actually the first time that my son running the bus with him, and she told him, I don't have enough change, so I just have $1. She told the bus driver, and the bus driver was she didn't say, he just said, okay, like he shrugged his shoulders. So she went and put the $1 in. A couple of blocks later, there was undercovers inside of the bus that just came in one stop before their destination. They asked them to come out, and they ticket them.
And that's with a 4-year-old. She had a 4-year-old with him. So Amelia's son that she mentioned is 4 years old. So in the case of this foster care youth, he was trying to escape what he thought was a dangerous situation, asked the bus driver for a courtesy ride or emergency ride. He denied it, and the young man was shot and killed right there at the bus stop. So I think that, again, I just want to lift up these stories because these obviously have real-life situations, real-life implications. I think that a lot of times we think of this as just overcoming a financial burden of a single ticket, but it forever alters people's life chances, impacts a lot of people being able to stay out of the streets, and for sure cycles a lot of us back into the system over and over again. So thank you all for being on this call. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, and so as we shared earlier, if you have challenges in helping young people clear tickets, or you want to get involved in further decriminalizing fare evasion and seeing that access to transit really should be a right for low-income communities and students. Great, yeah, I'm seeing a question about whether the slides will be available. Yes, we will send to all of you. It may take us a day or so, but I think for sure by Friday or next Monday at the latest, we will send all of you the link to the recording of this so you can share with colleagues so that they can watch the whole program, and we'll also send you a link to the slides so that you don't feel an urgency to need to write everything down right now. So we'll definitely be sending you both just the slides for review and the link to the full recording of this webinar for sure. And just quick, you know, when Herminia shared her story and we gave the context of working with all of our partners in the LA chapter of Dignity in Schools campaign, we really see all of these issues as linked to basic human rights violations of young people's right to dignity, to their family's right to participation in their education and life success. So Public Counsel has a website called fixschooldiscipline.org where you can get other tools around transforming school climate and working on these issues. And then as Kim mentioned earlier, that you can definitely visit the free legal clinics that happen here twice a month, and the email and phone number are below. So we'd be really happy to hear from you all, and we're really excited to be just building on the momentum, but we really think that, you know, transit access is an important next step given the way fare evasion has been used. And if any of you don't, you know, ride the train, I'll just share quickly, like Kim is talking about, what this feels like for people in their personal lives is, I'm a white middle-class attorney and I ride the train and I receive a subsidized pass, from my work because of the employment I have, and then I'm able to move in this space where no one's questioning, whether I should get to be there or whether my pass is valid or not, and, see on the platform, and as we've seen, Bus Riders Union has also documented the serious racial disproportionality, so that in terms of these stops, especially, you know, African American young people are disproportionately targeted. And so, you know, just think about what is it like to move in public where you kind of know people are after you. And many stories sharing about even trying to get on the bus and just get around, and then there's undercovers after you. And is this what we want to say as a community, is really what we want our tax dollars going to, this kind of suppression?
The only thing I would add is that this is also an environmental justice issue. And if we can provide free metro passes and a safe and welcoming public transit system, not only will we increase student access to school as well as jobs, healthcare, everything else we mentioned, it'll increase ADA for our local school districts, so it also is a way for one agency, one series of public institutions to support another public agency in terms of our education system. But it also creates lifelong riders. It gets young people out of cars and into public transportation, and the habits that they form, this has already been documented by numerous studies, the habits that we form as teenagers are the habits we maintain throughout our lives oftentimes. So do we want to continue to have an addiction to a car culture which is destroying the planet, or is this our way to really increase ridership forever on LA systems?
Awesome. So we've made our pitch. We hope that you'll join this fight and help be a part of this victory. We're going to give another minute just in case anyone has sent any other questions, or if you'd like to share where you're calling in from and the kind of work you do. We'd love to hear about what you're working on these issues. Okay, well that's okay. We really appreciate you joining us. As we said, we will email both the link to these slides and the recording, a link to the recording of this program. You have our contact information up here if you want to get in touch with us to learn more about our work or get involved. And we thank you so much for being on with us today. And I think Gabriela can go ahead and end the recording, and